Good morning and welcome to CEO Exclusive, where we get emerging trends from CEOs and their most trusted advisors. I'm your host, Soyini Koch, and we're continuing our series of discussions on the growing, bustling, burgeoning entertainment industry in Georgia and in the Atlanta area. And I am really pleased to welcome our first studio president, Dan Rosenfelt.
Hey there.
So,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And we'll also be joined by Michael Hale in a few minutes here.
Oh, it's Michael Hahn.
Michael Hahn. Okay, so I'll record that. Let me just do it over.
All right, hang tight.
Yeah, I'll.
Sorry.
No problem.
Right. Hahn.
I should have. H-A-N. Yes.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for CEO Exclusive, brought to you by Anona Enterprises.
Good morning and welcome to CEO Exclusive, where we get emerging trends from CEOs and their most trusted advisors. I'm your host, Soyini Koch. Well, we are continuing our series on the burgeoning, bustling, growing entertainment industry here in Atlanta and in Georgia. And I am really delighted to welcome our first studio president, Dan Rosenfelt. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And we'll be joined in a few minutes here by Michael Hahn from Capstone, who is one of the key people who brought the studio to life. And he'll be joining us shortly. But Dan, tell us, what are the trends around having the studio, the growing entertainment industry in Georgia that you think our CEOs need to know?
Well, I think, the first thing to know is that, first of all, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. It's great talking to you.
I'm really excited too.
Me too. So the film and TV industry is booming in Georgia, and it's wonderful for the state. If people don't know, I'll say that it's due to a wonderful tax incentive that brings production to Georgia. They can get up to 30%. Productions can get up to 30% tax credit on their payroll taxes, and it's a huge deal. We're not competing only with different states in the U.S., but we're competing with countries around the world to bring film and TV productions. And Georgia, as of last year, had more big budget movies than anywhere in the world. So it's a huge deal. It's a great incentive, and it's paying massive dividends to the state of Georgia with regard to jobs on the ground and capital expenditure. So the trends in my industry that I've seen that are new are company like Netflix is making movies and TV shows at a rate that no studio in the world has ever done before. So they have an audience, a worldwide audience, that they can track who's watching what. They can push out menus on people's accounts to show them exactly the types of shows that they like to watch. They're using technology in a way that's never been used before, and they're just making so much that there's not enough stages in the world really to handle what Netflix is producing right now. So that's, as far as a trend in the film and TV industry, the streaming services led by Netflix that's by far the newest thing. That amount of content has never been made before.
So a couple of interesting things. So I think it'll be helpful as we go into the next series of questions to just give our listeners a primer on the business model for a studio. I mean,
Sure.
How does it work? To me, it's like restaurants. I don't understand really how people make any money.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. And some of your listeners might be bored to hear what we do, but I'll try my best to make it interesting.
Well, you have people like Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah, we do.
Like
we do.
That's cool in and of itself. So people are
interested.
It is.
Yeah. So first of all, I'll say that Third Rail Studios, I'm the president of Third Rail. We opened 2 years ago. We're on the site of the former Doraville GM assembly plant in Doraville, inside of the 285 perimeter. And we have had great success in our 2 years in existence. Our first big project we had when we opened in 2016, the end of 2016, was Dwayne Johnson and Rampage for Warner Brothers and New Line. So we got very lucky to get a massive movie to start our company. So I'll tell you about what a studio does in our realm. We don't produce content. We are a physical studio space. We have stages. Our stages are purpose built, meaning they weren't old warehouse conversions. Some studios are warehouse conversions that have posts and maybe low ceilings and things like that. There's a need for that too for lower budgeted projects, but we're purpose built. So we have massive ceilings. We're 50 feet high. We have soundproofed walls. We have all the bells and whistles that a purpose built studio needs. So what we do is lease space to productions, TV, movies, commercials, music videos, anyone who wants to come in and film. We don't make creative decisions on who comes into our place. It's always nice when a big movie star can come by, or when a prestige project comes in. I ran a studio in LA for 5 years, and I had some wonderful TV shows. I had the movie La La Land, in my studio. So I had some great things. So it's nice to talk about.
That was won a couple Oscars, didn't it?
It did. And it almost won Best Picture. That was the snafu in the Oscars, which was my favorite moment. The Oscars, the award shows are boring, I think. That was the best moment when they announced La La Land as Best Picture and they didn't win. Moonlight won. That was amazing. So what we do is we lease space. We have stages. We have production office space. There's a lot of nuts and bolts in production that many people would find boring, actually, because they think about movies, they think about Dwayne Johnson, but they don't think about a staff on the ground, a production staff being in an office, accountants, producers.
Actually, the CEOs who listening to their show,
they might like it.
They all think about that, which
all
is
right.
why I asked.
Perfect.
So you basically get paid per day.
Yeah, so we lease
Great.
our space, and our clients, our productions are usually there from a month to 8 months. TV show generally lasts 6-7 months for a full season. So they will lease office space, which we have in our building, beautiful office space, stages, and support space. Support space is a huge deal. They need places to build their sets, to build their props. There's a greens department in every TV show and movie. That's one of my favorite departments. They're people who handle leaves and trees and flowers. So they need places to put this stuff. On Rampage, the Dwayne Johnson movie for Warner Brothers, they had a couple acres of plants that they needed to find space for, right? So they ended up leasing almost 200,000 square feet just in support space for that movie. So that's what we do. So it's a real estate deal essentially, and it's a customer service deal. We operate almost like a hotel for movies and TV shows. They come in, they're there to get their project made while they're filming around Atlanta. They build sets in our stages, and myself and my staff are there to make sure their experience is great, make sure our building is in good shape, and everything, all of our vendors for internet, phones, air conditioning, you name it, are functioning properly. So it's a massive customer service deal too.
So now let's go back to Netflix. So here's the thing that I think is interesting. Where is the underlying demand coming from for all this plethora of shows? And is the reason they can do it is that they pay the talent less, and so there's all these little itty bitty communities and audiences are following each little show, and so you don't need to necessarily have a big audience for each. How does it work? Like, it's not, people don't have more time and are not watching, or are people watching more stuff? I
think people are watching more stuff. I do. I think that the theater going experience has, I love going to the movies, but I think it's generally diminished. I think ticket sales, particularly in America, in the movie theaters are down every year. It's funny though, because the box office is up every year, but that's because tickets are getting more expensive.
Yeah, you're doing the IMAX and the RPX and all this
and
other stuff.
So
and
that's
charging.
driving the numbers there, but less tickets are being sold to the theater every year. And I think the reason is that people, their TVs are better, their sound systems are better. They know their couch is clean, and they got they got drinks and food at home that are not so expensive, and it's a good experience, right? So people.
A lot of people are having serious home theaters now too.
It's a big deal. So the eyeballs around the world are there for streaming services. I mean, their numbers are climbing every single year. And the more that can use technology to place in front of you, they have algorithms that will literally show you exactly what they think you want to see based on what you've already told them or what you've seen, right? So if you have a Netflix account, they'll show you things on your on your list very different from what I see. So we don't all see the same menu.
That's the good AI. I mean, for me, this is good AI. This is not the creepy. This is not the creepy AI that follows me around on the internet. This is good AI.
That's right. Like, I just searched for shoes on a website, and now I'm on a different website. And why are there ads for shoes everywhere? Yeah, yeah. No, that's very good AI, and so they know what they're doing on that front. And so if it's niche, they don't really talk about the numbers, who's watching the children's shows and who's watching, this TV show they have.
Shows
but they do make something for everyone, and that's a great thing. And they have different programming around the world. There are movie deals of films that have come out that we actually don't get here in the U.S., but that other countries on their Netflix they do get. So there's a lot of different deals too with studios and distributors that will showcase certain projects in one place and not another. But they it's working for them, and I mean their subscriptions are growing every year. So,
well, what that means for you is then they have to have there's increased underlying demand for your studios as well.
Yeah. I mean they're filming around the world, Netflix. And we can talk about Amazon and Hulu and other streaming services, but Netflix is truly making more content than anyone. So we can focus on them. But yeah, there's not enough stages in the world to handle what they're doing right now, what they're about to do. Their feature film division is just ramping up. They haven't even really started making movies yet. They've made a bunch, but they have a new regime in place with really talented people, and they're about to blast off on movies too. So all of a sudden, besides the TV shows that they've been making, they're about to make a bunch of movies that maybe some will be in theaters, here and there, but they're going to be on Netflix. So they haven't even begun that. So there's not enough stages in the world for them. There's not enough special effects people in the world for just Netflix programming.
Is Netflix here in is Netflix here in Atlanta? Are they doing anything in Atlanta?
They're doing a ton in Atlanta. I mean, we at our studio, we have a Netflix show right now. It's Warner Brothers Television producing for Netflix, a show with Dolly Parton, which I'm so excited to have. They're about to start filming the first season of this show. They're calling it Dolly Parton Theater. Can't talk too much about it except to say that it's a scripted show based on Dolly's songs. So there'll be a Jolene episode and this and that. So I'm really excited to have she'll be in a couple episodes, and she's producing it. And from what I understand from the producers of the show, she always saw her songs as mini movies anyway. So she's thrilled to have this opportunity to showcase her storytelling in this format. So they're doing that show at our place, and they're going to do a lot more at Third Rail as well. They have Stranger Things in town here, which has been a huge success for them. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a great show, and kind of an 80s throwback sci-fi show, which is really wonderful. And they've kind of hunkered down in Atlanta. They're bringing a lot more to this city. So they love the tax incentive here. They love the infrastructure here. I should mention that no tax incentive state where there's a film and TV tax incentive has really ever built itself out the way that Atlanta has and Georgia has.
Nathan Deal wants us to make sure that we say that it's not just Atlanta.
It's Georgia. No, people are filming all over Georgia for sure. But the majority of studios like mine are in Atlanta, and but people are filming in Savannah, and they're in rural areas north and south for sure. But um, no infrastructure has really occurred like this in any other state where there was tax incentives. So for years in New Mexico or Michigan, there was tax incentives that production went to, but they didn't build out studios and all the vendors coming into town the way that Georgia has. So it's a huge deal. So these productions show up, they're saving money on with this incentive, but now they have world-class places to go.
Talent and people and all the stuff that they need is right there.
It's all here. Yeah. So they love that, of course. And it's booming here.
Yeah. So want to switch and ask a different set of questions for the CEOs who are listening. We all love the movies, Rampage and Dolly Parton, or, whatever other movies we'll talk about in a moment. But as for you as the business leader, what does selling this look like? What does your sales process look like? Like, how did you manage to be the new kid on the block and get this massive deal? And then that you've kept your hotel full, right? You're at full occupancy.
We are. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So I lived in LA for 15 years. My whole career has been in film and TV in different capacities. So I know a lot of people there. Which was a good head start, as far as moving here and being able to speak on a daily and weekly basis with studio executives, decision makers, producers, who are looking for places to bring their projects. There's only I even say this in my meetings with everyone. I go to Los Angeles every 3 months for meetings just to stay in front of people and so they can always, if I don't know them, put a face to a name, but also just to talk, just chat with them. They appreciate it, and I do too, to really understand their needs and their goals, and to I talk to them about what our studio is and what we have to offer them: technology, massive internet bandwidth, fiber bandwidth, beautiful stages, beautiful production offices, all that stuff. But I even say to them in the meetings, there's only so much I can talk about a stage. It's a dark box that's soundproof with high ceilings, right? So, and they laugh about it too, because we all know a stage is a stage in a certain way. I mean, there's some bad ones that every producer's been in their careers where they can hear everything through it. There's maybe birds flying around inside, and any random terrible thing you can think of. Those stages exist too in the world, and everyone's been in those as well. But so I talked to them briefly about our studio and the newness of it and the niceness of it. But at the end of the day, it's a customer service business. So that's my sales job, is focused squarely on how we're going to take care of their production. That's it. I let them know that I was on the producer side of the world for years. Most of my career was making movies. So I know their language and their needs. And I'm very sensitive to what they're going through, and their bosses and their bosses' bosses, of what their budget means and what they're going for. So I talk to them about that a lot. And I love movies and TV. I told my parents when I was 6 years old that I wanted to work in film and television. And I've never veered from that. And I'm so passionate about it. I love sitting down to watch a movie. Is just still one of my favorite things in the world to do. So, kind of on a macro level, I just love it so much that I want them to succeed. So when they're in our place, I treat their productions as if it's mine, and I love the idea that these things exist in perpetuity. You make a movie, it's the biggest art project in the world, hundreds of people working on it, and finding a unified vision, for this thing, TV show or movie. And it lives forever. At this point now, with digital media, these things will live forever. So a painting, I love art. I love all kinds of art, but a painting's going to fall apart one day. Movie or TV show is going to be around for as long as we all are too. So I'm I take it very seriously that I'm trying to help them get this thing done, and I think that they end up really appreciating. It's a dollars and cents thing at the end of the day too, but I think they feel my passion for it, and they understand that I'm going to take good care of them in our studio.
So, all right, let's talk about the fun stuff.
Yeah, let's do that.
Movies.
Yeah.
Tell us about like the other big budget movies that you've had, and anything more that you can tell about what's coming up on the line.
Yeah, so we've been around for 2 years. So we've they're there for 6 months at a clip, a lot of them. So we haven't had that many projects, but luckily, we did have two of the biggest movie stars in the world just to start our studio. We had Rampage with Dwayne Johnson, which was a worldwide smash and a lot of fun, great monster movie. And then we had Mark Wahlberg was in our studio with Mile 22, directed by Pete Berg. Great action movie. It came out, I think, 2-3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And really fun action movie set in Bogota, Colombia. And we had NBC brought their first TV show to the state of Georgia and landed at Third Rail Studios with it's called Good Girls, which was it's a really fun show. It just got renewed for season 2. They're actually shooting in LA for season 2, but they did their whole first season in Atlanta and in our studio. Good Girls is about 3 suburban Detroit mothers who, for their own reasons, decide to rob a grocery store. And turns out there's way more money in that grocery store than should have been. And they realize they've gotten involved in some sort of gang or mob situation. So it's kind of like female Breaking Bad. And it did really well for NBC. So we had them. We just had a movie for Fox called Stuber, which comes out in May of 2019, which is going to be a really fun action comedy with Dave Bautista, who plays Drax in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. The big bald-headed. He's a former wrestler, and he's really funny. And so he plays a cop in Stuber, who he had LASIK eye surgery, something like that. He can't see in the beginning of the movie. He's recovering from it, but he's trying to capture these criminals. So he commandeers an Uber driver named Stu, who's played by a Pakistani American guy named great actor comedian named Kumail Nanjiani, who's in Silicon Valley, and he wrote and was in a movie called The Big Sick. He's the Uber driver named Stu, and he makes Stu drive him around the city to capture the criminals. So that comes out in May, and it's called Stuber. And there's Michael Hahn coming in. Oh,
great.
I'm sorry. I think you're going to introduce him, but
hey, Michael.
Hi, Michael. Good to see you, Michael.
Yeah. All right, folks. So now we're being joined by Michael Hahn, who was the impetus for the creation of Third Rail. Yes,
that's right.
So, listeners, once again, we're talking to Third Rail Studios, their president, Dan Rosenfelt, and now, their investor kind of conceptualizer, Michael Hahn. So, Michael, tell us the story of how a commercial real estate company came to create a studio.
So, the company I work with, Integral, purchased the GM Doraville assembly plant in about 2014. Go ahead.
With the intention of building the studio, or did you just buy it thinking that you were going to do something?
Well,
not sure what it was going to be.
They bought the property with the idea of it, and the way they described it as a transit connected urban node.
Okay.
So they were going to, and they are in the process of building an entire city there basically from the ground up. One of the principals of the commercial real estate there had approached me about building a film studio there. I had some previous knowledge of how to do that on another project I was working on. And it was an idea to get the site, start to get it rebranded, and then get some activity out there from an early perspective as we were trying to figure out exactly how to master plan and build out the rest of the property.
So our listeners are CEOs, and the idea of like creating something from nothing and like going out and then selling people on like this idea, this concept, and then was it you who found Dan?
That's right. So
how did you do that, and how did you go about convincing people that that you should build a studio in DeKalb County?
well, I just back up for a second.
You should
Dan
say
found me.
That's true.
Is that right?
But you should tell everyone how easy it was to build a studio.
Yes, it didn't take 4 years of work.
And then you had a couple false starts, right? Another location that you're trying to do something at that didn't.
Well, so me personally, I was working on another project that had a film studio that was not able to get financing to get built, but with Integral, who's a much better development partner, we were able to plan it, get the land set aside, get the design done, and then get the financing, which is really the most difficult part.
Money.
Banks want to lend on something that's a sure bet, and they want to make sure that the tenants have credit and they're going to sign a long-term lease.
And Dan is here
how's the conversation go with the banks? It goes like this. Can I say this? When they go, okay, who are your clients going to be? We're not sure. When are they coming? We don't know.
That's right.
How long are they going to be there?
We have no idea.
We'll find out. Those aren't good answers for banks.
No. And usually it takes most of the studios in Georgia, they're based on some special relationship. Either the principal that's building it may have a pre-existing banking relationships. They might be a wealthy individual or have some other kind of connection that's allowed them to finance a good example of that is Pinewood Studios with Dan Cathy. That's the prime example. So they were able, based on his
Chick-fil-A.
You could say that.
Yeah.
That's an important relationship, I would think, for Dan Cathy.
That's right. So, and we had something similar with Integral there. So, they've had a history of real estate development. They have great reputation, great banking relationships. So that helped us get the deal financed.
And to answer your question, I did find I found Mike and the studio on LinkedIn, I think. And
did you know that they were looking for someone?
Nope. I think I read an article in the Atlanta Business Chronicle about the studio.
Mm-hmm.
Reached out to him and said, I want to move to Atlanta. And I run a studio in LA, and can we talk? And he said, great. That's very nice, except we haven't broken ground yet, and it's going to be a while. So I think we talked every 2 months or pardon me. We talked. I stayed in touch every 2 months and friendly.
Dan was pleasantly persistent.
Yeah.
And he continues to be pleasantly persistent.
Say that fast. Yeah, it's true. That's true. Well, that is part of my MO, no doubt. Pleasantly persistent. But we just stayed in touch over, I think, 13 months or so until I finally broke everyone down and made them hire me.
But you said you had never been to Atlanta at some point. Yeah. Listeners didn't know this, but
right.
In our previous conversations, you had said that you had never been to Atlanta before. So you chose
right.
Atlanta having never come here?
Yes.
And I met Dan. I flew out to LA, met Dan in a cafe in I think it was Glendale.
Yeah.
And we had a great meeting.
Yep.
And I don't know, how long was it before you flew to Atlanta for the first time?
Oh, that was maybe a couple months later. And then, so I really had no connection to Atlanta, actually. And I'm not afraid of adventure, though. And I know it's a great city and it's a booming city. And I knew that, honestly, for the first time. So I grew up in Philadelphia. And when I graduated from film school, worked in Philly for about 2.5 years, but there wasn't enough work to go around there. So I moved to LA. My wife and I moved to LA. And, if there was a booming industry, I may have stayed in Philly. Perhaps. I don't know. LA was calling too. Mm-hmm. But after a while, though, I really wanted to make my way back east, but there was nowhere that had enough industry for me to find a job that I was going to, feel happy about. So when Georgia started really booming with production, I was like, okay, this is it's
Here's my
time,
chance.
here's my chance. So it was more about opportunity. And I think, it's a business friendly state generally. So a lot of people come to Atlanta because they have opportunity. But, yeah, I moved here pretty much sight unseen and love the city. So got lucky.
So offline, someone was observing that the big money, like the deal making, doesn't happen in Atlanta as much. Do you think that and Michael, maybe you can speak to this, that's going to start to come into Georgia over time?
I think it is, and I can see it start happening. And Dan and I have conversations about this. When the tax credit started, I think it was 2005, and then it got modified and really took off starting in 2008. The film industry was completely different than it is today. And you can see, with the advent of the Netflixes of the world coming online, and just the way movies in general have changed, and the financing, there's a lot of opportunity for smaller films. And we're starting to see that in Georgia, people investing and making their own content here, which is really exciting. And I know Dan's really involved with promoting that throughout the state, not just at Third Rail, but really in Georgia generally.
Yeah, I think that right now Georgia is a production state. So there's already been years of work in the development of projects, and finally they get a green light and they make the thing here. But I do think that I don't think that the Warner Brothers and Disneys of the world and Netflix are going to bring the front end of the industry here. I don't really see why they would, but I think other investors are going to say, hey, why don't we start to make our own stuff here, and they see an opportunity to make it here and to develop it here and find local talent. I mean, there's so many great creative people in Georgia that, and I am working really hard to help produce, and elevate local talent here, so they don't have to move away from home, and they can stay in their home state, and they can, if there's this, wonderful tax incentive here, why not cultivate talent, have people.
There should be an acting school here.
I'm sure there is. I mean, there's some great film programs here, and there's some great drama programs here, and we're trying to elevate local talent, find people to make things here. And I work with an incredible nonprofit called Reimagine ATL. We are dedicated to building a local workforce here, and it starting at the high school level, which has never been done in any other state. So we put teachers into high schools. They teach kids about film, television, music videos, you name it. We provide mentorship and internships and direct pathways to jobs or into colleges for these kids. So the more we do that kind of stuff, the more that we're going to be able to build a local workforce. People don't have to move away, and also a group of creative talent that truly represents Atlanta with regard to diversity. So all these storytellers can do what they want to do here in Georgia. So the film industry is paying a lot of dividends that go well beyond, Dwayne Johnson or Mark Wahlberg are in town. It's jobs on the ground, and it's workforce development in a massive way. So I think that's something that maybe your listeners would be intrigued to know more about, which is everyone talks about fancy stuff with movies and TV, and it is fun, to talk about, and that's the cool stuff. But the truth is that what it really is like a manufacturing industry, people making things every single day on the ground, building things, carpenters and electricians and painters and you name it. They're going to a place to build something every single day, and they're working in the state of Georgia. So on that front, it's a really cool story to see a booming industry and have that opportunity here.
Awesome. So I would love to hear, other new and exciting things. Like Michael, what other new and exciting things are you looking at and contemplating as you look forward?
So most of my energy right now is focused on the assembly development, which is adjunct to where the studio is built. And we're building similar to Ponce City Market, or you could also say Avalon, a development like that around the studio, which will be unique in Georgia and really throughout the country. So we'll have a film studio adjacent to Class A apartment buildings, great retail. We're going to have a cinema movie theater close by.
Don't forget food.
Food hall, the full development amenities that will complement the studio, and it'll be continue to enhance third rail and people and wanting to come there and it as a destination studio in Atlanta.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add about what's exciting? I mean, you have always everything there is new and exciting at third rail, but anything else
exciting.
You want to add? anything you want to add?
Well, I will say that we also have a show coming into our studio called Amazing Stories. It's NBC and Apple. Apple's about to become a massive player
they're coming into content too.
Big time.
Wow,
yeah. So,
that's a big trend.
So I didn't know this, but it turns out Apple has a lot of money, and so they're actually at work, very hard at work on a lot of new films and TV shows. One of them is Amazing Stories. Steven Spielberg made this TV show in the 80s. I watched it as a kid. It was an anthology, kind of akin to Twilight Zone, something like that.
I remember a few episodes.
Yeah, so it was kind of.
Did he have one like with Jim Henderson? Was there one that had Jim Henderson stuff in it? Okay.
Jim Henson.
Yeah.
Henderson. Probably. Yeah. I used to work for the Jim Henson Company. By the way, that was my first job in LA. I worked with Kermit the Frog, and I was an editor and physical production person for the Henson. So whenever any Muppet went around LA, it was me and them. So. Dream come true, truly. But besides Jim Henson, Steven Spielberg is truly my inspiration and my favorite filmmaker of all time. And for him to be bringing Amazing Stories to our studio, they move in.
Will you get to meet him, or have you? I'm sure maybe you've met him before. Forgive me.
Dan bumped into him last time he was in Los Angeles.
I did, but I chickened out. I don't get starstruck. I've worked for big actors, and I've worked with big actors on movies over the years, and but I actually kind of made a handshake deal with the folks at NBC for Amazing Stories a bunch of months back in LA, and I walked out of their offices onto the NBC Universal lot, and I was feeling great because we just made a deal on a TV show of theirs with Steven Spielberg producing it, and the first person I walked out of the door of the office, and Steven Spielberg walked past me on the lot, random. And I was like, you know what? I can't even say hi to this guy, but he'll be around. He'll be around probably a day or two,
You knew you were going to get another chance. You were like, I'll see him later.
One day. Yeah. I don't seek out directors or actors in our studio. There's a level of, kind of you don't want to bother them, right? So I run into them in the lunch line usually, and I'll talk to them about how good the salad looks, or oh, you like potatoes, I like potatoes, but but I don't bug people.
You don't gush. I get it.
I don't.
I get it.
Sometimes they seek me out. They're like, are you Dan? Yes, I am.
Well, listeners, we've been delighted to have Dan Rosenfelt, president of Third Rail Studios, and Michael Hahn from Capstone on our show today. You've been listening to CEO Exclusive. I'm your host, Soyini Koch, and I hope you have a profitable, productive, and very prosperous week. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
This show is brought to you by Anona Enterprises, where strategy is your access to money and performance. Learn more at AnonaEnterprises.com.